You're listening to Gamedaytarps podcast, coast to coast, with your hosts, Ryley, Dakota, Dallas, Daeden, and Wilbs.
Alrighty, everyone. Welcome back to the Gamedaytarps podcast. This is episode 46, and we have a friend of the show returning, Mr. John Keane. How's it going, man? How have you been lately?
Hey, good. Friend of the show status. I like that. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. How am I doing today? Well, got back last night at about 5 a.m. from Prince George. So,
Wow.
just, toughing it through the day here on the late night, podcast here. So
Awesome. Thanks for
What is
coming
it?
on, man.
The Blazers are playing, I think, 3 and 4 nights, was it?
Well, it's just been weekends lately, so it's just a Friday night home game, Saturday in Prince George, and now they'll wrap up the first half here in Alberta with 3 games in 3 night stretch to close it out.
Sweet.
Awesome. So you're on the road right now then? Is that what you're saying? Sorry?
No,
Yes,
got back to Kamloops about 5 a.m. from
Oh,
the game in
nice.
Prince George last night. It was their teddy bear toss. Those games always take a little bit longer to
Yeah.
execute. So, back at home Sunday. Sunday's my day to kind of recoup and get ready for another week here.
It's a long journey.
I
Yeah,
guess
it is.
speaking of that too, how fun is it? Because obviously the Blazers use their flex, if you want to call it, of the fact that they started the teddy bear toss and what it's grown into. Like, how cool is it kind of broadcasting every year, being like the inaugural team that did the teddy bear toss?
Yeah, it's kind of a nice feather in the cap, right? It's kind of something that the organization doesn't go out of their way to toot their own horn, but it's nice to know. I know Jeff Merrick. I was texting back and forth with him earlier this week. He wanted to find out more information about that first teddy bear toss game way back when in '93.
Yep.
So I had some information. I gave him, some of a sort of a lead in, and he talked about it in his brand new podcast, The Sheet. So it's pretty
Yes.
cool. He gave Kamloops some love, and I think now that the national media is on it, there's no debate where it started, and it's nice to kind of have that here.
That's awesome. We kind of ran with it a little bit too, just on our last podcast. We are talking about how the Orlando Solar Bears kind of took it in a different direction, and they did like a donation of underwear toss. I don't know if you saw that. They collected like 6,000 pairs of underwear to give out to shelters or families or whatever they did with it. But I thought that was an interesting, different rendition.
Yeah, not bad. And other teams have, it's gone from the, up in Canada, we do the toque and mittens toss along with the Bears. There's been other variations of it, but it all comes kind of from that same one idea where apparently Don Larson was sitting in his house one day and a big truck rolled by, and sometimes those big trucks can shake the house, I guess, where he was living, and it shook a teddy bear off the shelf, and it came down, and he saw the teddy bear fall off the shelf, and he said he had the eureka moment right there of
Really?
why don't we try this? Yeah, that's apparently the story, anyways.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a bit of a while since you were on the show here, John. But last time we chatted, basically there was 5 teams in the mix for the 2026 Memorial Cup, and we were kind of giving our thoughts of who that city might be to have the privilege to host the 106th Memorial Cup. Now, it was announced about a week and a half ago now that Kelowna actually has won the bid. Now, I was kind of wondering about your thoughts on, was it definitely the right decision by the league? Maybe this was kind of like a third time's a charm sort of thing. We all know they lost the tournament to COVID in 2020, lost the bid in 23 to Kamloops, but now finally, the third time around, they have been awarded the 106th Memorial Cup. Now, I just wanted to know your thoughts on if maybe that was definitely the right decision, or what could Kelowna make of this opportunity?
I was really thinking down the stretch in the final week, it was a 50-50 proposition with Kelowna and Medicine Hat, and both would have been a pick fine by me for sure. But when you factor in everything Kelowna can offer, and let's just forget about 2020, the fact that that really got ripped away in a terrible situation. They build up the team, and then they can't have the tournament. Let's just forget that happened. That's a big thing, but let's forget it happened. Kelowna's location of the rink. Have you guys been downtown to Kelowna for games?
Prospera,
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's in the heart of the action there. May the Okanagan is a pretty nice place to be. They've done it before. Medicine Hat, albeit maybe further ahead on the hockey side, like way further ahead on the hockey
Yeah.
side. If you've been out to where that rink is, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it's too bad. And if you just want to compare venues when it comes to, you know, where they are in the heart of the city, yeah, it's, you know, the rink isn't even technically in Medicine Hat; it's in Redcliffe, a suburb. So it just wasn't going to be something that I think that a panel of hockey people would come and say, "Wow, look at this rink in the middle of nowhere. What a great place to bring everybody to." I can just see, you know, the people that made this decision, the 5 people on the independent panel who voted unanimously, would kind of fall in love with, you know, Kelowna and that lakeside view. And, you know, when you look at it that way, it's tough to argue with. And then, you know, the cherry on top is what happened to them in 2020. So I think it is the right call.
Yeah, so we all know that the CHL loves displaying their top prospects and players on the center stage for this tournament. Now, you would probably say that a lot of the on ice boxes were checked for co op place with the Tigers, but a lot of the off ice boxes were checked for Kelowna. That kind of had a more of an eye popping appeal for a lot of fans, the board of directors. It's like Kamloops, right? The two cities, like, you know, arena down by the riverfront, hotels, restaurants. So yeah, I think they probably beat Medicine Hat by a long shot. But you know, I guess you can consider it a snub a little bit to Medicine Hat, but it definitely was the clear cut choice. I think personally.
You know, the one argument that I saw Medicine Hat make is that, you know, they've been a franchise and a good partner for the league for 50 years, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
they haven't had a shot at it. Where Kelowna has basically had now 3 shots at it, right? They hosted in, what was it, '04? They had the opportunity taken away in 2020, and now they'll get it in 26. Where Medicine Hat's kind of saying, like, when's our turn? When's our shot? And on ice wise, I don't know if they'll be in a better scenario than they could be, you know, perhaps next year. We'll wait and see what shakes out for what that roster could look like.
Well, yeah, because with Kelowna, you could potentially not have a Ginla in 26. You probably lose out on Caden Price too, Crystal. So the star power is not really there, so they're going to have to be doing a lot of moving around. As for Medicine Hat, all they'd really have to do is maybe bolster depth-wise, right?
Yeah, the hockey side's interesting, and with this NCAA changing landscape year to year now, I don't know what you're going to have as far as star power goes. We'll look at Kelowna first of all, Dakota, and the fact that you know, TJ Ginla, now that he is going for hip surgery, you know, he's basically losing a whole year of development, and I think that probably lands him back in Kelowna at some point, if not for the start of the season. Maybe he gets a few games in Utah, then he's sent back. When it comes to Crystal and Price, those are 2 guys now that Kelowna is basically forced to move this year to try and recoup assets, if not a player that fits the age group or draft picks for next year's team. That's the thing. They actually have a pretty good roster right now this year, and now they're going to be forced to blow that up, likely do that
Yep.
in order to have a roster that you need to compete for this tournament. So, and we haven't even talked about Gavin McKenna yet, and you know, there's all sorts of talk that Gavin McKenna could make the jump to NCAA next year if he goes and leads this league in scoring this year. Maybe he needs a new challenge. Maybe he needs something. There's rumors that there's already a deal in place. Whether I mean, I can't confirm that, but there was a lot of talk in circles that, you know, something might already be done. It would be unfortunate for the WHL, but this is the new landscape we live in, and it could definitely see one of the top players in the league, you know, look for a different challenge for his NHL draft year.
Yeah, and I guess that would almost in a way be a good thing for these small market teams, right? Say the Regina Pats and now the Medicine Hat Tigers. Like, if the WHL or the CHL is looking at a host for the Memorial Cup and you have a once in a generation type kid, or now these kids are great, maybe they won't be generational, but for WHL standards they're generational. You have that opportunity to get that kid in the Memorial Cup guaranteed. You almost have to start taking it because, like you said, they can just jump ship. Why, if there's no guarantee, right? They lose Caden Lindstrom, they lose Basha, they lose their goaltending, all this stuff in the next couple of years. Say they even win the Memorial Cup this year, just as a guest who wins their way in. wins the WHL and gets there. Well, now he's done that. There's no reason for him to stick around. Like you said, if he's scoring 160 points or something by the end of this season, what's the incentive for him to stick around if he's, I guess, done it all and he looks at the roster on a decline, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that the thing is, now you're awarding the Memorial Cup a year in advance. So you really don't
Mm-hmm.
know, what it's going to look like year to year for these players, right? And Kelowna, make no mistake, they know it. They know they have to build a roster up here. And Medicine Hat, if they can return Gavin McKenna and a bunch of players, they'll take on the moniker the Blazers had in 2020, which was, let's win our way there. And they were well
Yep.
on their way to doing that. They had a great team that year. They were supposed to play Kelowna in the first round of the playoffs, a 1-versus-4 matchup in the BC division. It can be a big rallying cry. So Med Hat may say, screw it. We're going to go through the front door on this, and we're going to try to, give the organizing committee something to think about.
For sure. Rumblings that the rest of the WHL is a little bit upset. Like, if we're being honest, the last 2 Memorial Cups now, well, the last 3 would have been like technically Okanagan, Thompson, Okanagan, all within an hour and a half space. Obviously, Kelowna would not have got this if they didn't lose the other one, for sure. But now, like, the rest of the WHL, the Manitobas, Albertas, Saskatchewans, even the Washington States are kind of like, you're keeping that money and revenue pretty much in one area. Is there any kind of rumblings out there of like upset ownerships and stuff like that, or upset areas of the WHL?
Well, Spokane, let's go there. They were in the midst, and they were probably almost on par with an equal chance with Kelowna and Medicine Hat, in my view, anyways. But what Spokane was fighting against, and even though the committee told them, no, this is not something you should be worried about, I know it played a factor. It had to. The fact that last year's Memorial Cup was in Saginaw, so you're going to go 2 out of 3 years into the United States for that tournament.
Yeah.
They can say all they want about how, like, that's not a factor, but I really think it is. Like, sponsorship dollars, the Canadian Hockey League, to be going to a U.S. market here back to back, or 2 and 3 years, would be, I just don't think it can be done. So I know that was the first question that Spokane asked. That's what their general manager told me, Matt Bardsley. They said,
Yep.
full transparency, we want to bid, but if this is going to be an issue, we won't submit our name and go and do the legwork for this. And they were told, no, by all means, we could. I guess the organizing committee and the CHL said, well, we could say, do we really want to go to the Okanagan and BC Interior, back to back years? So that was enough for them to go through the process. But I know they were very disappointed when they didn't get the word.
Fair enough.
You definitely got a feel for these fan bases too. Like, think of the Brandon Wheat Kings back in Manitoba, right? Westoba Place, they were getting all these upgrades ready. They would not have hosted in 16 years since they saw the Memorial Cup tournament last. And now they basically did not win. So it's kind of leave a bit of a sour taste in your mouth, if you will, for some of these fan bases. But it is what it is at the end of the day, right?
Well, 16 years, honestly, is not that long of a time, really, when you think it comes to your league once every 3 years. And there's like this time 5 teams bidding, right? Like Kamloops waited from 95 to 2023. So 16 years isn't too bad. That's also a new ownership group in Brandon, and I think there's a little bit of kind of, you have to pay your dues kind of a mentality a little bit too. When you're a new ownership, you can't expect to have like a marquee event like thrown on your lap. You think of Kelowna, Bruce Hamilton. He's been the chairman of the boards from the WHL for many, many years. Although the board of governors don't make this decision, there's a little bit of like, you put in your time. You've
Yep.
been a great partner to the league, and you're going to get some of the perks that come with that.
Makes sense. All right, well, I guess we can jump to some trade rumors maybe that you've been hearing. We don't know. We obviously don't want you to spill your tea on all your stuff, but there was a trade today. I don't know if you want to give any insight on that, your thoughts on the players. It was Regina and Prince George. Is that who it was?
Yeah, Corbin Vaughn, who is anyone here in Regina? Any of you guys based in Regina?
No.
No. Yeah. Okay. Well, there was Regina's had a bit of an issue there with their twins. There, the Vaughn twins, who are from Merritt originally, and one got suspended by the team for an incident in practice. They call it a hockey incident. And while one was suspended, the other twin just decided to basically leave the team and ask for a trade. Well, that player that was left the team asking for a trade was Jackson Vaughn, and that's the forward that ends up in Everett. So it was only a matter
Yeah.
of time until Corbin Vaughn was traded. And I'm surprised it kind of took this long, but sounds like there were some logistics to work out. It is Prince George, the destination for a second and 19-year-old defenseman, Efren McNutt, which is quite the price to pay, I think. But I think, Prince George was looking for a little bit of some ruggedness back there, something they had last year. They don't really have a lot of this year, so they get that. They get a guy that is a bit dangling on suspension, a lengthy suspension for his next bad hit. He has a history of suspensions in the league, so it's a bit of a risk for Prince George because the next, check to the head or whatever could be 8-10 games.
Wow.
And that's a significant blow. So I think Al Miller, the GM in Regina, has done a great job with a bad hand. He had these two players basically, one quit, one suspended, and he was able to really parlay that into some nice assets for sure.
And then I'm forgetting the trade that just happened. I'm trying to look to see if I have it noted. But the one that happened like a week ago, I believe. I forget
What,
that.
like
And
Tanner
have,
Howe? Was it the
Probably
Tanner
the
Howe
Brayden
trade?
Yager deal.
the
Probably
Yager
the
trade,
Yager
yeah.
Oh.
deal.
You had a big tip on that. Do you want to kind of give us your insights on the Yager trade?
Yeah, well, it was no secret that he was going to be traded. Think of Fraser Minton for the Blazers last year, needing to recoup assets after hosting Memorial Cup and building that team. Brayden Yager was always sort of that chip that would be played in a recoup of assets this season, and there was a few teams in the running. Lethbridge was a little bit of the dark horse on that, but they were really the only team willing to step up for the package that the Warriors get out of it. So Lethbridge again, they had lost 5 straight games. They think they have a really good team. They think they're well coached. So Peter Anholt, we had him on our show, and he's like, "What the hell? You only live once, so let's roll the dice here a little bit." And I thought that's pretty bold for sure. But they get a great player in Brayden Yager. They also get the goaltender too that
Yeah,
won a
agreed.
WHL championship last season. So they feel it was a price worth to pay. The roster players they give up, 2 roster players. I mean, they're not, no, they're not, marquee names. More depth, and one's a goaltender, and one's a good prospect that we could see in the league next year. So very interesting that it was Moose Jaw. A lot of people were linking, Lethbridge. A lot of people were linking Yager to Prince George or Everett. But we'll
Wow.
see how it all plays out here coming up before the 10th.
Well, it's crazy. You don't see a package like this every day, right? A star goaltender and a star forward packaged together, right? Now, it almost, to me, like you get 2 first rounds sent back to the WHL ex champions of last year for, the 2-star caliber players. Now, it almost is like, wow, how could Kamloops not pull this off when they were trying to gun for the Memorial Cup? Like, it's honestly crazy. They gave up 13 assets compared to these 9, right? A couple roster players, only 2 first, the 26 and the 28. So it's kind of crazy.
Well, Memorial Cup, you pay a premium.
Yeah.
Whenever there's a WHL Memorial Cup, you pay a premium on that. And I did some digging around, and Unger on his own, Connor Unger, probably worth a second-round pick. Was probably the thought process there. Think of the
Okay.
Blazers. A lot of people think about that trade, and it was a lot to give up for sure. But you look at it. Olin Zellweger was part of that, but the other part was Ryan Hofer, who at the
Hofer,
time
yeah.
was demanding 2 first-round picks as well. So it was really 2 for Zellweger, 2 for Hofer in that acquisition. So it's a little bit of a tough comparison there, given the fact it was a non-Memorial Cup year this year. Still 9 pieces, it's a lot, but you're right. There was a feeling. There's a feeling, Dallas, that maybe it was not as much as people expected for the talent of Brayden Yager.
Let's move on, I guess, to what we were kind of talking about there with McKenna, like this shift in the CHL, NCAA, BCHL landscape with, we've been seeing something like 29 players or more have just asked to be reinstated back into the CHL. I think 16 have made the transition from USHL and BCHL combined, I believe I heard. So, like, what is your thoughts on this now being official, and what you think is like? Is it going to, is it going to take leagues out like the BCHL? Is it going to bolster the WHL, OHL, QMJHL? Do you think it's going to hurt them? And do you think it's going to hurt college? Are the top players when they're younger going to be in the WHL? So just your thoughts on those options.
Yeah, Ryley, we really don't know what this is going to look like just yet. Like ask me in 2 years or 3 years what it'll look like. But I think the general feel is that the WHL will get access to some of these top 16 and 17-year-olds that maybe they wouldn't have had access to in the past. So there's a net player gain there. There might be a player loss, though, at the 20-year-old level where players are into their 20-year-old season. They're getting offered a full ride package to a big school. And instead of playing out that final year as a 20-year-old in the league, maybe they jump to go to university or NCAA at that point. So we're also watching the big names here. Like what happens to the big names? And Gavin McKenna, we've talked about that. I'm sure these universities, these top schools will be going after these top players. But it's a little bit of a, do you leave a perfect situation or a really good situation in the WHL for your draft year or after you're drafted for, a little bit of the unknown? Remember that NCAA's an older league. It's a 20 to 23-year-old sort of a league, which I think is a great option there for some of the graduating players. But I think we're going to see some 19 and 20-year-olds leave before their WHL eligibility is up in order to explore those NCAA options. So I do think the WHL gets more talented, but I think it also gets younger over the next few years. We'll wait and see how that works.
I just have one more question on it too. If you've heard, is there any rule barring a double jump? And what I mean by that is an 18-year-old jumps to college, does not like it, after one season jumps back. Will his eligibility remain with his team, or does he go in like a draft pool? Like what, is there a rule around that right now? Like, do you have to commit one or the other?
Well, yeah, those are details that the league, is sitting down behind closed doors with their competition committee, with their board of governors, to try and figure out just what they would do in that scenario. And would your WHL scholarship money you've accrued over the time, would that be void if you left before 19? Or would that perhaps still carry over? Would that money supplement an NCAA package? These are all things, those are good questions. And, the CHL is behind closed doors working really hard on these details, trying to say, okay, what's our move if this happens? And what's the move if this happens? So that's a good question. And I just don't have an answer for you right now. And the CHL, I think, is trying to figure out what exactly they would do in that case.
One more thought, sorry, actually just popped in my head. So, like, let's just say with McKenna, because it would take a special talent in the NCAA hockey world to get one of those NIL sponsorship deals, right? But say McKenna does go, he gets a massive, like, let's just call it, $900,000 million sponsorship deal, right? And then he does want to come back. Now he's also a paid player trying to come back to an amateur league. Like, that could be another thing that you're talking about where they're talking behind closed doors. Like,
well, there's paid players in the WHL already on NHL contracts, right? So
yes,
that, I don't think that's an issue. The big issue there, I think, is what we've been told is that Canadians aren't eligible for nil money.
okay.
That's not something that is on the books right now. They're trying to figure out just how they could make a player like that eligible for nil money. And I honestly, guys, I don't know. Like in the world of college football, like there's big dollars, right? We talked about Ohio State's roster and all that on the football side, but there hasn't really been any sort of big nil deals in the NCAA hockey world. And, as much as we think hockey's important in Canada, NCAA hockey would probably rank fourth, probably, as far as school sports goes in the States, or maybe even deeper than that, because it's just not a Southern U.S. thing. There's no SEC teams or anything like that. So, it'd be interesting to see just if a WHL player or CHL player could get some nil money and what that a deal like that would actually look like in the end.
And I mean, not
Fair
even
enough.
McKenna. I've seen more about Michael Misa heading over to Boston. I think it was Boston College, potentially this year or whatever.
Yeah, a few names: Michael Misa, Martrone, who's draft eligible this year. There's talk of that. But the one thing that I think some of these people that throw these names out forget is that if you sign your NHL contract, and remember, a lot of these first rounders, they get walked off the stage, and within a few weeks they already have their NHL entry level deal.
Yes.
So if you have your NHL deal, you're a first rounder or whatever, second rounder. And like in the Blazers case, Harrison Brunick signed a few weeks after Pittsburgh drafted him in the second round. So once you have that pro contract, you're no longer eligible for NCAA hockey. So the WHL's card would be: let's get players drafted, let's get them signed, let's turn them into pros, and in order to do that, they'd stay in the Western Hockey League.
So all this NCAA talk in the CHL, we all know the premier destination to play major juniors is CHL. Now there's been rumblings that a couple USHL teams, Muskegon and Youngstown, approached the OHL, formally verbally asked to join the league. And then a couple weeks later, we hear that Acadie Bathurst of the LHGMQ is in talks of being sold to go back to the Rock in St. John's. Now, for us out here in the WHL, John, do you think it perhaps is in the best interest in the WHL for a couple teams to be rejuvenated? Let's say in the Winnipeg market, perhaps the Cranbrook or the Chilliwack market, where they don't really get to see a lot of big time hockey. So, all this expansion talk, do you really think it could be in the WHL or the CHL's best interest to start expanding more for a lot of these up and coming kids coming into pro hockey here to play major junior? Because there was 19 players alone in the British Columbia Hockey League that up and left to go sign pro here in the CHL. So do you think we need the expansion or probably not?
Well, that's an interesting one, guys, and that's something that's going to be talked about a lot. I know the WHL does like that Chilliwack market, and probably felt like that team shouldn't have left there. I don't see any inroads into Winnipeg right now with where that's set up and how the Winnipeg franchise was operated there, and the rink situation is just not something they don't have. But here's one for you guys. I'll throw this at you here: Penticton. How about the V's looking at
Ooh,
potentially a WHL franchise? There
Okay.
would be a hurdle for sure.
wow.
And we don't know if they're interested, but I'm sure the WHL would say, well, you're sort of the heart of the BCHL. You know now that you really don't have the advantages you used to have. And I know there's probably been some interest already in Penticton to try and see what it would take
Yep.
to land a WHL franchise, just like Wenatchee did a couple of years ago. The WHL, I think, would be very interested in Penticton. There is one hurdle because Kelowna is so close to Penticton. The Rockets have something what's called a territorial exemption, where they would have to veto and rubber stamp any sort of a WHL market coming within their radius, within their fan radius. So any sort of Penticton to the WHL would have to be vetoed by the Kelowna Rockets. And maybe it's not expansion, guys. Maybe it's relocation. Maybe there's teams out there right now that maybe not meeting standards or not generating money. Would those ownership groups be interested in a relocation somewhere or a sale for relocation? I don't know if we want to go beyond 22 teams. That's a lot of WHL teams, and the talent can get diluted and watered down. So I would think maybe more relocation over expansion at this point.
There even be much more of a Canadian market to choose from, or would it have to be almost more American-based teams, do you think?
Well, there are already six in the in the BC division, or sorry, in the US division on our side, and Wenatchee is a bit of a stretch for me, just given the dynamics, the numbers there. I don't know if there's another market in the US. I think someone mentioned Chilliwack. I think that's potentially something that there's been talk of the Vancouver Canucks wanting to buy a WHL team and relocate them in Chilliwack, so they'd have the Chilliwack Canucks, they'd have the Abbotsford Canucks at the AHL level, and then they have the Vancouver Canucks. And I think that's something they would look at wanting to do. And then I think Penticton would be one. I don't know if there's another market in the prairies that could sustain WHL hockey or not. I think you mentioned Winnipeg, been there, done that. So I would think five teams in the BCH or five teams in the BC division right now. Maybe up that to six, and you have a bit of a wrinkle out here. But again, these talks are all going on at a very high level with the Board of Governors, and I guess we'll see what shakes out here over the next year.
I think the only small market in Saskatchewan I could see is Estevan. They are a very historic franchise within Hockey Canada. They actually have ties to the Blazers for a lot of listeners out there that don't know. The original Estevan Bruins disbanded and became New West, and then New West disbanded, became Kamloops, and then in 1957, the SJHL Estevan Bruins became a team, and the rest is history. So that is kind of a neat connection that the Kamloops Blazers here in town have with another historic franchise.
Yeah, Estevan, they have a nice new rink there. It's a new venue there. The only, I guess, concern about Estevan is that market along with Weyburn, like it's very much boom or bust depending on the price of oil and what's going on with the oil market there, because they're so dependent on their economy on that. Like they could be really humming and doing very well, and all of a sudden oil dips to $40 a barrel, and maybe the economy can't sustain that anymore. So I don't think they want to get into a boom or bust situation. Estevan's even smaller than Swift Current last time I checked. So that is a possibility, but I think for now, Saskatchewan's probably tapped out when it comes to WHL markets.
Yeah, and Estevan's only like what, a half hour away from Regina.
Yeah, about that little. Yeah, about an hour or so. Weyburn's close. I mean, that'd be cool if Estevan and Weyburn could put their swords down from fighting each other and combine for a franchise or something. But yeah, that's something to watch, guys. I mean, I think there was an April Fool's joke, wasn't it? That Estevan had landed a WHL team. I think even maybe the Estevan Bruins actually played a April Fool's joke on themselves. So who knows? That it's nice. It's nice to think, but it takes a lot for an SGHL market to jump into the WHL for sure.
So like halfway through the year now, and I know like for Daeden, right? Obviously, I'll just chime you in here. Going for your media college that you're going to, like, is there anything kind of new and different that you guys have transitioned on your show? Like you said, you started doing your live broadcast. Is there anything that halfway through this year now you've kind of switched up and you've changed, and on the broadcasting side that you're like trying to, I guess, make better, or that you have made better just in this short half season?
Well, I guess like the only thing I've really done that's different is I've started doing play by play. You guys know it. I actually did play by play. One of the guys that was on the roster for the Quebec team was Pierre Olivier Roy, who actually won a Memorial Cup in Kamloops. So that kind of ties in kind of nicely there. But not much new going on there. Just a bunch of work. But yeah, I like the play by play. It's definitely fun to do.
Well, do as much opportunities you can, get as much reps as you can. Probably not going to get paid for it, whatever for now, but just the more you do, the better. The better it gets. The more comfortable you feel, the more flow you get in situations. So it's just like practice, right? Just practicing your shot or your skating. You're practicing your sort of your technique and how you manipulate a play-by-play broadcast.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, John.
Yeah, you bet.
And I forgot to Wilbs when we were talking about the teddy bear toss that John Wilbs is like, I would say, one of the head guys in the London Knights fan club. You were kind of spearheading the teddy bear toss night in London. I saw you and your family were donating your time and going out there and collecting bears and stuff. I don't know if you want to give us some insight on London's side of the teddy bear toss night as well.
Okay, so basically, so we have this leads group where we have because the fan club has about 4,000 people in the group, so we're pretty down and big, and I'm part of the leads in the situation. So we ended up getting VIP access, going to the back and getting the all the bears and stuff ready because we already donated it before the game even started. So we were collecting bears throughout before the teddy bear toss even happened to get teddy bears already, and then we got bags all set for the fans who would come down to the arena, count the bears and whatnot. Then we got to throw all the bears, and our last year total was around 11,000, and this year we were just shy of 16,000.
Awesome.
So a big boost from last year's, and we have this head guy. He's a super fan. We've had him on the show before. He's helping running Barky's Buds for Barky for donated his merch for fans that can't afford going to games and whatever. And there's certain fans that will go to the games, meet Barky after the game and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool stuff that he does. But it was a really cool experience from the VIP from what I saw from our toss. So we're already getting ready to try and break that record. People are already collecting bears already. It's not even
That's
next
awesome.
year yet.
I think with London, that roster they have, they would have to. They should have made a new rule where they can't throw Bears until their third goal of the game or something like that. Here, make it difficult on
For real.
them.
How about was it Zane Perek or Michael Misa? Was it Misa or Perek that got
Misa, he
suspended for
shot a bear in the stands.
chucking the bear back over the stands? That was kind of crazy. The OHL's just been handing out suspensions left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have big time, guys. You know what? And when I first read the suspension for Michael Misa, I was like, "Oh, that's soft. Like, what are we doing here?" But then I watched the video, and it wasn't one bear; it was like 4 or 5. Like he was rifling them back there. And the charity event, kids event. I think the OHL had to act. But you're right; they've been throwing out all sorts of suspensions, some new terminology they've used in some of these, these suspensions. So yeah, they're trying to get some of this stuff out of the game, and they've come down to the pretty heavy hand out east for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of London, John, I mean, they're probably, the one of the most historic franchises in the entire CHL, but probably again this year, an OHL favorite to be the representative of the 2025 Memorial Cup. Do you have any plans on making the journey to Rimouski, Quebec in the springtime?
Well, you know what? I would love to, only if the Blazers are there, though, because we've already booked a vacation here. We took advantage of the Black Friday deal, so we booked a holiday around the Memorial Cup for Maui. But I
Nice.
can cancel it if the Blazers are there. But I mean, that's a long way
Yeah.
there for sure. But yeah, you know what? When the hockey season's over, I kind of shift into off-season mode, and I'll probably go to Kelowna for sure, somewhere close. But be sure nice to be in Rimouski with a team there that you're following and you're covering the game. So probably will pass on the one here coming up in May.
Yeah, I'd definitely take Maui over Rimouski anyways.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe the Western League can expand to Maui here.
There
I'll be
we
in line
go.
for that.
Can't get any more west than Hawaii, so might as well add a team.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe that'll be the pitch here.
I like it. I don't think we've talked about kind of the World Juniors, and you're around it more than anyone else. Like, I don't know, maybe talk to us about like Carter Yakimchuk, a guy who almost made the Ottawa Senators. I personally was not surprised about Brunick, just for the fear of fact. Again, if we're basing it off, he almost made the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? Like, so what is your thoughts on Yakimchuk, who, from what we know, has had a fantastic season? And I know there's only 7 spots, but 7th overall pick, almost makes an NHL roster, doesn't get an invite to camp. What are your thoughts on some of those guys that aren't there?
Yeah, I had a really good chat with Peter Anholt, the general manager who put that team together from Lethbridge there about that. And he's like, listen, it's like, we appreciate that Canada is so passionate that the first thing we talk about is the players that aren't on the roster rather than the players that are on the roster. But you mentioned the 7th overall pick. You mentioned Ottawa. At one point, Zane Perek wasn't on that roster either, right? And he had the invite after the injury to Harrison Brunick. So the one thing that Peter said is like we're not like picking a fantasy camp here. We're not drafting and we're not taking an NHL. How do they portray in the NHL, or how do they look to be down the road in the NHL? They're trying to pick a team that can win now. And I know one of the focus on the blue line was players that actually like defend and defend hard. They have enough of that up front. They can score goals, or they should be able to score goals. They have enough on the power play. They want rugged Canadian defenders that are hard to play against. That was their priority when picking defensemen for the selection camp, and that's why they like Harrison Brunick, because at under 18s that was his role: kill penalties, defend like crazy, and he was excellent at it. So as much as Harry likes to take off with the puck and get down the ice and lead the rush, that wouldn't be his role. They would want him to defend and be hard to play against. So that's what they were looking at. They look at Carter Yakimchuk, sure, offensive guy. And who knows, he could be next up on the list. But for now, their focus was some hard-nosed Canadian kids to shut down some of these smaller, more European skilled teams.
And I know, Dally, your one quarrel is Ravensburgen out of Prince George in net.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on the goaltending there, John?
Yeah, so Ravensbergen just 18 years old, right? He doesn't really have any big game experience here yet. You look at the goalies that were picked above him; they're both 19 from the WHL, and Carson Bjarnason and Scott Ratzlaff. And being that the tournament is in Canada, guys, I don't think they'll have a third goaltender. Like when it goes to Europe, they'll take a third goaltender, but they'll only have two. So they were keeping in mind two guys. They weren't going to just bring someone along for the ride this time and get the experience. So they feel like they have enough in George and Ivan Kovic and the two Western Hockey Leaguers. Enough. And you know what? To be honest with you, I don't know if Ravensbergen's had a great season. I really don't know if he's had a fantastic year. He's being tested way more than he was last year. His numbers are still save percentage around about 900 or so. Saw him last night actually in Prince George. So I think his time will come. I think it definitely his time will come, but I think they felt there was more experience, older goaltenders, more tested goaltenders, guys that have been through that program already at the U18 level that they know and they trust.
Yeah, I compare Ravensburgen to like Allmark and Swayman, right? So like he's on his own now. He's like Swayman, Allmark's gone. Ty Young was the Linus Allmark, right? So we know that Ty Young is now in Abbotsford, so he's gone. Ravensburgen's taken the full load for PG right now, so it's kind of like a testament, if you will, right? All on his lonesome.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you know what? I was talking to some folks up in PG, and as much as they would have loved to have him go to camp, they desperately need him right now. They need him for a month here to kind of solidify things and get them back on track. They haven't been playing their best hockey. Their backup Michael Luke has struggled a little bit, so that's always kind of the silver lining when your player misses out on a training camp is that you'll have him for a month and you can really lean into him while. Like I think of the Blazers when they lose Dylan Garand, when they lose Connor Ingram, and they lose Logan Stankoven, and they lose like these top players. You kind of hang on for a month until they're back.
My question to you, John, is I guess, do you go if you're Hockey Canada and you're the managing staff here? Do you go with the two 19-year-olds in Bjarnason and Ratzlaff, especially Ratzlaff, where he was on the team last year? Do you go with those two and leave Ivan Kovic, or do you sit one of the 19-year-olds or cut one of the 19-year-olds and bring Ivan Kovic, where he's probably going to be your go-to guy for the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great question, and they'll sort that out. And my broadcast partner, who's on a lot of my games with me on Radio NL, Dan DePalma. I ask him about that stuff, and like those are the answer. Like those are the questions that they're trying to answer internally here, and they'll do it as a group to see what they want to do. I think they have in their mind the two goaltenders they'll have. I'm not sure selection camp will change much. But they want guys, I think, that have gone through that U18 program that they trust. I know they like George. I know they think the world of Ivan Kovic. They like Carson Bjarnason. Scott Ratzlaff might be a little bit on the outside looking in right now. But yeah, it's a dilemma. And whatever choice they make in goal, that the first soft one that goes in, or a big game moment, up Canada will be up in arms, right? Like we'll all be, what was like you can't win. It's tough. It's tough. So I do feel for it. And something Dan told me, he's like, they need a goalie that can win them a game, but also handle those low event games where maybe they only get 14, 15 shots and still be there for them. So they're looking for the full package here. I think they feel they have it, but we'll see how it all plays out here before Boxing Day.
It's funny how. Oh, sorry, Ryley. Sorry. It's funny how the Canadian Four Nations team is kind of scrambling for goalies. Nobody knew who the heck was going to play in the Canadian crease, but then the World Junior team, you're like, hey man, any of these four guys could be our starter. So like, it's crazy. Maybe Hockey Canada should be looking in or on the upside as to seeing these new goalies coming up. We might not be in so much trouble here in the future.
Yeah, it's tough. It used to be easy for Canada. Carey Price, Roberto Luongo, and rinse repeat. It was pretty simple. But times are changing for sure. But you're right. Like, who's the next great Canadian goaltender? I think a lot of people thought that Carter Hart was on his way to being that guy, but he's had some stumbles off the ice and on the ice. It's goaltending's odd, guys. Like, it's so odd. Like, a goalie comes out of nowhere sometimes and just absolutely steals the show and is really good for a few years, and then he tails off. Like, it's such an interesting position where, just because you're good at 18, 19, you might be a top goaltender in your junior league, does not guarantee success at the NHL level.
Yeah, I've always kind of like seen that if even since like Carey Price 2007, we've never really had a Canadian goalie that's been the starter at the World Juniors become a number one guy in the NHL.
Devin Levi's close. He's getting there, guys. I think Devin Levi will be that guy down the road. We love to hope that Dylan Garand is that guy at some point. He's still toiling away in the Hartford Wolfpack and the Rangers system. But you're right. For years that was the Canadian goaltender was going to get a shot. We're still kind of waiting. For other guys to emerge here in the next few years. So we'll keep an eye on it. But for whatever reason, goaltenders kind of find their way. Kind of it clicks around 26, 27, and you can kind of ride a guy out after he sort of matures and
Joey
figures it out.
Dakota
think
in
I got-
Seattle is exactly
Well,
that.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
a guy that
yeah.
perfectly describes that is Ingram.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 100%, right? Yeah, and it's great what he's doing. It's great to see, him being number one in Utah, and who knows, maybe he gets himself into that conversation. I thought he was in the Vezina conversation last year a little bit, when he was out to a good start this year earlier. So, yeah, that'd be great if we could have Connor Ingram at the Olympics or something
Yeah.
one
That'd be
day. We'd
awesome.
have something to cheer for
My
sure.
one
Kamloops has this thing where they've just been having a long-standing tradition now of just the city of Kamloops being represented on the national stage for the World Juniors. Like we've had the Zaries, the Stankovens, the Bankiers, and then now we had Brunick, and then we had two Kamloops boys themselves, Tanner Moendijk and Sawyer Minio, now being invited to the roster. So it's kind of cool to see that Kamloops is just taking a big step into the hockey world and saying like, hey, we got a lot of talent around these parts.
We do, and yeah, great for Sawyer Minio to get that invite. The Tanner Molendyke one is interesting, right? Like everyone's going to try and claim him for sure, but I think if you ask him, McBride is his town. He did play some minor hockey here. He's listed as
he
born
lives
in
here
Canada
now.
Yeah.
too, I
He lives here
believe.
now.
Yeah, he trains with Greg Kazoris in the off season, but I think if you ask him, he rides with McBride. They tell me so. Um, Sort of that's where it's at. But yeah, that's another guy that played a year with the Thompson Blazers, the U15 team, and and now I guess we could say we got Dan DePalma too,
Yeah.
right? So we can't forget about Dan on the
Of
coaching
course.
staff. So it's yeah, so it's we'll be well represented hopefully in Ottawa for sure.
I gotta ask, since we're on the topic, John, there's plenty to choose from, and of course you're a little bit older than all of us. Don't mean to put it out there
That's
too
fine.
clearly, but what's your favorite World Junior moment of all time?
Oh boy, what would it be? You know what? And it's a shame that I think that was the year with no fans. Um, I mean, the Jordan Eberle goal is always. I mean, it gets replayed at this time of year, and I don't know about you, but I already got the TSN theme song stuck in my head from their promo they're playing 30
The
times an hour right now.
35-year anniversary one.
Yeah, the "What a
Yeah.
Time to Be Alive" song that I
Yeah.
think is stuck in everybody's head. But the real cool moment, I think, just in the last couple of years was probably in Edmonton, right, where Mason McTavish makes that unbelievable save. Our guys in net, Dylan Garand, kind of like hoping a prayer, gets bailed out, and then Logan Stank open up the ice, sets it up on the assist on the overtime goal. That was pretty cool from a Blazer perspective. But I go back a little bit longer. I remember going to games when the tournament was in Saskatoon way back in, what was it, 89 or 90? I'm trying to think. It was like Eric Lindros and Pavel Bure, and they went to some small cities for some of those round robin games in the other pool. So it was always a Christmas tradition, watching TSN, over the holidays. But yeah, like I don't know, what do you guys have? What, you guys are a little younger than me, so maybe you have a more closed in moment. What's your moment?
Mine, I definitely have to go with the, and that's what's so good about this year is we're gonna get possibly a repeat of the game. Well, we are gonna get a repeat of the game, but it's Tavares' hat trick on New Year's Eve versus the States in Ottawa. It's you can't beat it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good moment for sure. Yeah, Pierre McGuire just going crazy, just overselling everybody. Yeah,
Probably
Oh, yeah.
the Johnny Tays shootout, right? He just keeps coming over the boards. Seven goals or whatever he
Yeah.
scored to win that game. Like,
yeah, that was, and Carey Price in goal too, right? Yeah, that was pretty cool for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when back when, like, because me and my dad grew up watching World Juniors together, and he would always show me that shootout that Tage had with the 3 shots, and that was a pretty cool moment. But like, I feel like my favorite one has got. I think that McTavish goal line save was absolutely out of this world. I have to go with that one. That was insane.
Yeah, I don't even know if I have a favorite moment. I'd hate to be honest, but I've watched very few World Junior games. I'm just the highlight guy.
Yeah.
I
You're
know.
missing out, Dakota, man. I tell you, you go get yourself a Bailey's and coffee on Boxing Day here, and you get into this tradition here because I think it's a great tournament. You know what? I when I was young, I remember getting up really early at like 5 a.m. and like watching Canada beat on some nation in Czechoslovakia
Yeah.
or something like that. Like getting up early and you're off for school and watching these games is pretty cool. And another cool moment. I'm trying to think of the year. Guy Charon, who was the coach of the Blazers when I first came here, he was the coach of Canada's World Junior team, and you'll see it every year. He's in some wooden rink, some sort of like wooden enclosure over top of him, and they just had learned that I think Russia had lost a game. This was back in the days where they never was a playoff.
Yep.
There never was a playoff round. It was just the best team in the round robin, which was pretty cool. Like you couldn't take a night off at all. And Guy's like super pumped. He kind of does the double fist pumps like this, and they had won it. I got to get the year on that one, but that was cool to have Guy around for the Blazers, being a part of that moment for sure.
World Juniors moment that I could remember was back in 2014. I unwrapped this under the tree. The beautiful 100-year anniversary Team Canada jerseys they had. I remember Zach Fucali, Connor McDavid, Curtis Lazar, Max Domi, just a stacked team. And that was a big moment that I remember just sitting around with family and enjoying the World Juniors. Like, I think that was probably one of my favorite moments of all
Kamloops'
time.
own Joe Hicketts too.
Did you
on
get?
that
Yeah, I was just
2015
gonna
team.
say, is that the
Yeah,
Yep.
is that the
yeah.
one where Joe Hicketts threw it over the
Yeah.
glass and it was a penalty?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a bad tournament.
That I've
was a
never
bad
seen that
tournament,
before. A
yeah.
guy clear it on a slap shot and it just goes all the way out. I've never seen a delayed game 200 feet.
Was that in Helsinki
2015,
in 2016?
Mhm.
I forget.
Oh, 2015.
Yep.
2015
Yeah,
was in
I
Toronto.
forget. It was one of
Montreal.
those years. Either way, it was Joe. He 200 feet slap shot over the other boards for delay a game, like something you've never seen before.
I mean, that might have even been.
Yeah. There's always a moment in
That
this
might have been
tournament.
2014. No, McDavid was wearing the bubble.
He wasn't on the 2014
He wasn't.
team, I don't believe, because he wasn't drafted yet.
2015.
Or well, it wasn't past his
No.
draft year. Sorry.
But he was rooming with Lazar though.
I just remember that happening. I remember that happening overseas because in Europe they have the shorter
Yeah.
end or the end glass, so none of the Canadian players were used to it. I think it might have even been Jake Virtanen, and he just like threw it down the ice and it went over.
Jake had a bad tournament, as well, and Dave Lowry was coaching that team, and that was definitely over in Europe. I probably think it was Helsinki. All these years, it's funny, the World Junior Tournament, like we're already talking about the 2025 tournament. And it's weird because it starts in 2024, so I've always had a problem trying to decipher which
I know
year
there's like
was
3
what year.
games on the other side of the new year. The bulk of the tournament is those 4 or 5 days from Boxing Day to New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one more moment I'll throw in there. I don't know because we're on the media side. I'm not on me, I guess, but you're on the media side, John. And how much of a piece of gold was that Swiss coach's pregame speech? I think it was like 2012, 2013 or something. And he came in and he was like, "Oh, they shoot better, they skate better, they pass better. They got how many first rounders and the rest second rounders." Like, I think that was amazing.
Great clip, but it wasn't so much what he said. It was like the delivery, right?
Oh yeah.
He was just fantastic. He deadpanned it, and he's like, "Why should we even try?" Like it was kind of funny. That was a great moment. And one thing I'll watch at this tournament, speaking of coaches, is Dave Cameron, the coach of the Canadian team. TSN and Hockey Canada are like they're together in this tournament. They are one. I remember Dave Cameron last time he coached was very standoffish with TSN with the on ice reporter. It was James Cebulski at the time, very guarded, thinking that the questions were maybe too, maybe hard hitting, which they weren't. And I thought the pressure and the stress kind of got to Dave Cameron. He's like, TSN is your friend; they're on your side. Don't treat them like an enemy. So watch Dave Cameron, his interactions with the TSN reporters this time around here. I'll be kind of watching that that's just my media side of it. I just thought he did a poor job with it last time around.
What do you think of the new interviews that they've started doing, like Julia Teixeira and Reagan Subban? They've started doing those on ice interviews, like kind of, or the reporter hits like on ice. What do you think of those?
A very much a look at me moment. There's no need for it. There's no need to be skating. Okay, we know you can skate. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Penticton V's when they had the opera singer do the anthem
He hit
there.
the mat. He hit the mat.
I forget his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, he tripped over the mat. Like, again, no reason to be skating and singing when you're doing it. And the hockey god said that's enough and tripped him up there. Yeah, it's very much, all the power to you. Does it add anything? Does it bring anything to it? Probably not, but I guess it shows that you can skate. And, I don't know. I just don't see the point of it, to be honest with you.
This was awesome. We only had you for half an hour last time. You stayed for an hour. That's way more than what we are deserved of, but thank you very much, man.
No, good chat. Boy, I looked up and see the time. I was surprised. I felt like it was only about 20, 25 minutes. So keep on doing what you're doing here, guys. Appreciate inviting me on here. I know you guys have good ties to Kamloops and are plugging along with us. So anytime I can help out, feel free to shoot me that DM and we'll chat hockey. We'll talk World Junior Wrap or trade deadline wrap or something in the future here. Don't be afraid to send me a message.
Awesome.
We could do both if you wouldn't mind. We'd love to have you for both. After the World Juniors and then after the trade deadline, for sure.
Sure. You guys can pencil me in. We'll chat after that. See
Awesome.
how the next few weeks go. It's pretty
Thanks,
important
John.
few weeks, guys. So
Alrighty.
take care.
Take care, John. Thank you.